Hello, back again on the Top Recap channel. This time I will tell a movie's entitled Arcadian. Let's get straight into the storyline. The story begins by showing the city's destruction due to mysterious creatures that appeared out of nowhere. The creatures began to kill humanity to create unending destruction, and not many humans survived the event. Then, we will see a man named Paul looking for supplies. While warning sirens have been heard throughout the city, he then tries to escape the end of civilization and arrives at an empty house. In that place, he found two twin babies Paul adopted, Joseph and Thomas. The scene then moves to 15 years later. Paul has now managed to take care of his two sons, who are now teenagers. It is known that the terrible creatures that attack humanity will only appear every night, so they do their activities during the day and in the morning. Just as the sun began to set, Joseph would close all the windows of his house and bring their pet dog named Rocco into the house. Paul then reprimanded Thomas for coming home late. Thomas, however, argued that he was helping a neighbor from the next village. This Rose family owned an animal farm. After they finished their dinner, the twins continued to play chess, but their eyes were soon distracted when Rocco started growling and scratching the floor. They immediately realized that it was a sign of the creature, and sure enough, they were suddenly startled by a loud banging sound from the front door. Realizing that the creatures were trying to get into the house, Paul and Thomas immediately held the door to prevent the monsters from entering. After a while, the creatures finally gave up and left. Thomas then blamed Joseph for not helping them to hold the door. But Joseph had his own reasons, and he deliberately listened to the banging of the door to study the creature. As a result, Joseph found that the creature made 3 attempts. The first banging for 10 seconds, the second for 20 seconds, and the last for only 1 second. Joseph assumed that the first was meant to be a test, then the second was an actual attempt to break through, while the third was just a frustrating blow because they couldn't get into the house. The next day, they checked the door and noticed scratch marks, and since the door was already fragile, they intended to replace it with stronger wood. While Paul and Thomas were collecting wood, Joseph was seen alone in his shed. Paul approached Joseph and asked him what he was doing. Joseph said that he was repairing the engine of the garden car for their daily use, and with some help from Paul, the car was finally up and running. Joseph then walked around the hill using the car. After driving around a few times, Paul returned home and told Joseph and Thomas to get more wood, but Thomas refused because he had promised to help Rose's family. Thomas followed his father's orders and went to look for wood with Joseph. But on the way, Thomas split up and went to Rose's house, asking Joseph to pick him up in the afternoon. Meanwhile, Paul, who had finished repairing the door, rested beside the waterfall. Meanwhile, on the other side, Joseph went alone to look for wood in the river and brought it by car. He then found an old boat and tried to get into it to look for supplies. As he searched deeper, Joseph was surprised by thousands of insects coming out of a pile of garbage. Fortunately, Joseph left immediately and got out of the horrible place. Meanwhile, Thomas was seen helping the Rose family farm, but his main goal was not that. He actually wanted to meet the daughter of the Rose family, Charlotte. The two of them then walked to the field. As they talked, the sun began to set, and the two said goodbye to each other. Meanwhile, Joseph, who had just collected firewood, hurried to start his car to pick up Thomas. Meanwhile, Thomas was seen running quickly towards his house. Unfortunately, Thomas slipped, fell into a hole, and hit his head. When Joseph arrived at the pickup point, he did not see Thomas and thought that his brother had gone home first, so Joseph chose to rush home. But when he arrived home, he didn't find Thomas. As a result, Paul immediately packed up and left with Rocco to look for Thomas's whereabouts. Joseph was assigned to guard the house and close all doors and windows. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Thomas finally woke up from his stupor. He then looked around and used a lighter to see if there were any creatures around. Just as Thomas was about to look for a way out through a narrow gap, he was startled by the appearance of a creepy creature's hand that almost caught him. Thomas tried to stab the hand with a knife, but the creature's other hand suddenly appeared to catch Thomas. Thomas's screams were heard by Paul and Rocco. Paul immediately entered the gap and immediately killed the creature. Finally, they met again. They then found a way out, but because it was dark and dangerous, they decided to leave the place in the morning. A few hours later, they heard the creatures coming through the hole again. Paul and Thomas immediately set up flares to drive them away, but instead of leaving, the creatures grew in number, and they even tried to break through the ground to catch Paul and Thomas. Paul then told Thomas and Rocco to retreat, while he inserted the flare into the hole in the ground. When the creatures tried to reach their prey, Paul made an explosion, which unfortunately hit him. Meanwhile, Joseph began to hear strange noises and immediately took the initiative to set a trap. While Joseph was sleeping, a creature shifted the wood on the door and used its very long nails to touch Joseph's face. After making sure that Joseph was asleep, the monster just walked in. But Joseph was only pretending to be asleep and immediately pulled the rope, which automatically dropped the wooden box and trapped the monster. In the morning, Joseph found that he still had not seen the whereabouts of his father and brother. He immediately searched for both of them by car. After a long drive, he finally finds Thomas and his father, who have just escaped the cave. They brought the father, who was injured by the explosion, home. Upon arriving home, the two immediately laid the father on the bed. After that, Thomas returned to his room and was surprised to see the monster that Joseph had captured. Joseph said that the creature only took 8 seconds to enter the house, where it was the shortest time they had faced the creature. Thomas also said that he and his father killed a group of monsters in the cave last night, and maybe they will come back to take revenge. Moreover, Charlotte had said that the monsters rarely approach the farm area. To prove it, Thomas tried to kill the creature that Joseph had captured, but Joseph tried to stop him because he wanted to study the monster. When the box was opened, the monster was released and immediately hid under the bed. Finally, the monster felt threatened and attacked Thomas immediately. Joseph immediately restrained him, while Thomas immediately cut off the monster's head using an axe. Even though the monster is dead, Joseph still wants to study the part of its body that is filled with insects. Due to Paul's condition, who had not yet regained consciousness, Thomas took the initiative to take his father to the Rose family's place because it was safer there and there were medicines to cure his father. Joseph initially refused because the Rose family was stingy, but he finally agreed to his father's recovery. The two brothers then took their father to the Rose family. However, once there, Thomas was disappointed by Charlotte's parents, who said that she did not have more medicine and refused to accept Paul, who was seriously injured. Even so, they were willing to accommodate Thomas's stay so that Joseph had more food to eat for him and his father. As a result, Joseph returned home with his father feeling disappointed. He also blamed Thomas for what had happened to their father. Not accepting being cornered, Thomas finally started fighting with Joseph. Fortunately, Thomas soon came to his senses and stopped strangling his brother. When Joseph and Paul returned home, Thomas enjoyed a delicious meal the Rose family served. Charlotte also invited Thomas into her room and showed him her belongings. Meanwhile, on his way home, Joseph saw sheep running in fear and mounds of earth everywhere, which meant that the monster had begun to move underground. After taking care of his father, Joseph went to the warehouse to collect objects that he would later use as traps. He also started closing all the windows, and when he passed through the living room of his house, Joseph accidentally fell because he had tripped on the carpet. When he opened it, there was a hole underneath, so he thought the monsters were already under his house. We return to the Rose family home, where Charlotte sees Thomas in her kitchen looking for medicine. Out of pity, Charlotte finally gave Thomas the medicine secretly, but without realizing it, one of the farm workers overheard their conversation. As a result, when Thomas ran away, the worker confronted him while pointing a gun and accusing Thomas of being a thief. Because there was no other choice, Thomas complied and was detained by the worker. As night fell, other workers began to arrive to punish Thomas for daring to steal from their group. When one of them was about to shoot Thomas in the leg, he was suddenly pulled by a creepy creature into a hole. Meanwhile, Charlotte's parents wake up in the main house when they hear a strange noise, and when Charlotte's father went to check, a horrible creature appeared and immediately attacked him. Because of the commotion, a candle fell and burned the Charlotte's house. The monster also went crazy and killed Charlotte's father and mother. At that time, Charlotte was in her bedroom. After the screams of her parents stopped, Charlotte chose to check it out. It was there that Charlotte was shocked to see her father and mother had been killed. Meanwhile, the workers tried to fight the monsters in the warehouse, but their efforts were in vain. One by one, they started to get killed. Plus, more and more monsters are coming. Before the warehouse burned down, Thomas managed to free himself. At that moment, the monster sees Thomas, but fortunately, Charlotte appears and shoots the creature. The two then fled together to Joseph's house. Meanwhile, Joseph had just put a lot of things into the hole to close it, but soon he heard a sound coming from the front door. When Joseph went to check, it was from Thomas and Charlotte. Thomas gave the medicine to Joseph, who then gave it to Paul, who was now conscious. Joseph told his father that the monsters had made holes all over their house. His father then said that they had to fight the monsters. Joseph then made a plan to blow up their house with the monsters. They then started collecting all the gas cylinders from the shed, while Rocco kept barking to alert them of the danger. They also moved the freezer box into the house as a shelter shelter. After that, Thomas continued reinforcing every window in the house, while Joseph piled up all his belongings and poured gasoline over them. Not only that, he also added explosives to each of his belongings. A few minutes later, the items covering the hole suddenly began to move. Charlotte and Thomas then hid behind the door, and when the creature came out, Thomas immediately stabbed it with a knife. Although the creature put up a fight, Thomas managed to knock it down and kill it. Charlotte was attacked by another monster, but she managed to shoot it. Thomas and Charlotte then rejoin Joseph to move the freezer box. Paul also wakes up bloody because he has just killed one of the monsters that emerged from the chimney. Paul then took Charlotte's gun and began firing towards the floor, killing the creature that emerged from underground. However, a horde of monsters soon appeared in the corridor and prepared to attack them. Paul kicked the first monster, causing others to appear. Joseph, Thomas, and Charlotte took down several monsters before the monster attacked Paul. This impressed Paul with the trio. He then told the three young people and Rocco to get into the freezer box while he would sacrifice his life to fight the monsters. Before that happened, Paul had remembered the day he found his two sons. Soon, the horde of monsters stormed in, and Paul immediately detonated the materials Joseph had prepared earlier. As a result of the explosion, the whole house exploded, including Paul. After the explosion stopped, the three youngsters and Rocco came out of the freezer, but it turned out that the monsters were still not dead. With a burning state, they chased the three young people. They then escaped by car. In their escape, the monsters formed wheels to chase Thomas and Joseph, and because Charlotte's gun ran out of bullets, so she hit them with a gun and managed to kill them all. After it was safe, they stopped on the road to look at the stars they had never seen before. The next morning, they returned home and decided to move out of the area. They then gathered the supplies that could still be used and buried their family properly. After that, they and Rocco left, hoping to find a new, safer home. And the movie is over. Don't forget to click subscribe, like, and comment.